Okay, today we're going to take a look at this Captain Patrol. This is the 1960s version made by Imai. It was a robot kit. It's the rarest of the versions. I've done the Missler before. I'll put a link to that video down below where I repaired that one for Ozzy's Toys. This one is a repair for Ozzy's Toys based on, let me move the camera a little bit, on YouTube. He did a whole video on it. How it's a piece of crap, and it is, and wanted to see what I could do for it. So let's talk about what we got first, and then I'll show you what I did for it. So basically the functions, it's a switch on the back, so you can see it's walking with light, moving gears in the chest, moving feet. What it's missing right now would be the antennas, and those would be best reproduced with a resin printer, and the shoulder covers, which pin into these small slots on the shoulder blades. Those would be the main things it would need, so it would look completely, like it should have looked. But basically, what we had when it arrived from Ozzy's is a shell with many cracks in it that could not be fit together any longer because all of the mounting tabs were broken off. The one of the gears was loose, not in place, in other words, but all of the gears had been mounted, probably originally by whoever built the kit, upside down. They have a front and a back, and if you put, they had the side that should have been towards the front towards the back, and that puts the spacing of the gears wrong, so they don't line up and mesh right, and so they bind up. The motor was also dead, would not run, so I had to take the motor apart, clean out the brushes, lube it, put it all back together. The motor did have a plastic pinion gear, which was cracked and slipping. All the other gears inside the robot, well, not all of them, all but one of the drive gears for the display, the rest of them are metal, the ones that perform the work functions. One of the differences between the Captain Patrol and the Missler is the Missler had some sort of switch mechanism built into the battery back door, which we didn't have the battery back door for. But on the Captain Patrol, they actually have a slide switch in the back and a place for that switch. This battery door latch mechanism, original mechanism, is broken, so I've decided to go ahead and put in a magnet there and mounted a small screw, as you can see there, so that way it just sticks on. It's held on with a magnet because the catch part was gone. Now when Ozzy received the toy, this battery door, as you can kind of see there along the edges and here, was 100% glued in place, and it was glued in place with these vintage batteries in it. And the one that says leak proof, it was kind of true. Didn't leak anywhere near as bad as modern batteries, but it had been leaking. Anyway, these two batteries were in there with the battery cover glued on, and they were in there just for ballast. You need the weight on the back of the robot for it to work right. They didn't even have any of the battery connection parts or any of the battery wiring. None of that at all was in there. They were running the wires, and they didn't have a switch. They were just running the wires out the switch hole and then using their own remote to control the toy. Now the toy actually runs on 1.5 volts. If you run it on higher than that, you're going to burn the light out up in the head. There's two batteries here, but they're both in parallel, because back in the 50s and 60s, carbon batteries didn't last very long. So you put two in parallel and the toy will last and run longer. On the rear steering, none of this stuff was in there, so I had to fabricate a plate and this wheel, which can be directed so that you can make the robot turn if you want. This rear wheel was all in place, so this is important and had to be hand fabricated. What else do I want to say? Of course, the two antennas, best way to do that would be fabricate 3D model file in CAD and then print them on a resin printer, because it'd be highly detailed. Plus you could print them in a flexible material that way if they were going to be replaced. What else we wanted to say? I think that kind of covers it. I did a video when I repaired the missiler. Let's move the camera here. I'll put a link to that as well up on YouTube when I repaired the missiler one, so you can see the difference between the Imai Captain Patrol and the missiler version. And I'll put a link to Ozzy's one on this before the repair. And then let's see, let's take a look at the pictures. I think there might be a few pictures that you might find interesting of the insides. And let's start. We can start with these of the batteries, even though you've just seen them. So let's start there. And there you can actually see the word leak proof written on there. So here's the inside of it. You can see the gears sit on plastic posts, and then there's these caps that hold them in place so that they can spin. But the gears themselves have a nipple, a ridge, and they had them mounted with the nipples to the backside, which put the gears too far forward, which meant they didn't line up with this drive crown gear. So they all had, in order to remove those, you have to disassemble all of this stuff so that you can get the crown gear off. Then you can flip all the gears over and put the caps back on and then reassemble this. This is the vintage style motor. If you watch the other repair video, you'll see the difference between this type of motor, which was mostly used only in the 50s and the early 1960s. There's the plastic pinion gear that was replaced. Here's basically an overview of the parts and the wiring coming down and everything. You've got your leg pieces, your back, your arm pieces. This rod joins the two legs together. Here was a picture of the bottom before I repaired this piece that was busted out. This is where the steering wheel goes, the caster, whatever you'd like to refer to it as. And then here it is. This is the plate I put in, was styrene, and then this whole caster mechanism I 3D printed. I think that's about it. After that, there's just beauty shots, and there's really no point looking at those when you've got the robot sitting right here. So, I think that was about all I wanted to cover. Swinging arms, moving feet, driving, light, moving gears, model kit, made by Imai in Japan around 1965, as I understand it.